mentally healthy for you, Ben. I want you to be better. I want you to.
They're talking about some Romanian angels and something. I don't know if it's. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Yeah, Candace Owens is going in. I don't know how much of it is accurate and how much of it isn't. But shit. It's crazy. On this screen, there's the most shorted stocks. This one really went to 10. Damn, I was looking at this at $1. I liked it. Oh, it's at 16. Oh my god, that was a mess. Wow. That's painful. That's painful right there. Yeah, I think she went to... It's like a luxury reselling marketplace. I don't want to sign up. I just want to look at the thing. It's stupid. They used to not be that, really. They're saying something about Romanian angels. So, I gotta look into that. Ooh. They're gonna go. Yeah, Sean and Sam are cool. I'm saying it like I know them, but they're good content. Put it like that. And they seem genuine, more genuine than some of these other people.
Whole life pumping rather than drinking, which was the reason they started pumping in the first place. What up, Sam?
I'm like making a copyright strike.
Don't
copyright strike me off.
Slack thing out, and I was looking at. I have this one channel for like the best stuff I read this week. I call it my content diet channel. It's basically what were the vegetables, what were my whole foods that I consumed? Because I consumed a lot of junk, but this stuff was actually good. And I was just kind of browsing through what really stood out and resonated with me, and I have a couple. I don't know. I wanted to know yours because you read a lot more than me. And I think we read totally different things. So I'm curious if anything comes to mind for you on that topic.
Yeah, for me it's a lot of books. And so
It's a DC
the
read.
topic that I got obsessed with this year was presidential assassinations. I went deep on the 4 different presidents who were assassinated, and that interested me. But you know, I'm a huge history fan, and so I could talk to you all about history, which I could like say some of the most amazing stuff that I learned.
I feel like we did a whole bit when the Trump assassination thing happened on presidential assassinations. There's some crazy stories, right? There's like the guy who had a speech in his pocket that like blunted the blow until he was shot. And he survived Roosevelt, and he gets shot by his car on his way to his speech.
I may have looked at this before. Oh, this looks familiar.
Weeding.
Yeah, that was Roosevelt. There's only been 4 presidents that have been successfully assassinated, and 3 of them happened between like 1865 and like 1905. And like pretty much up until Andrew Garfield was assassinated, which I think was like around 1904. Any human, any American, it was like customary, you can just go to the White House and schedule an appointment with the president. And the idea here was that they were supposed to be like a man of the people, and I think it's ridiculous. And the thing that's that even up until 1963, 64, 65, when JFK was shot, it was only like 300 people. And so like something was non-existent. And so I'm like obsessed with that about how like something
Navy Yard.
even after 4 years, or sorry, 4 deaths happened. And so I've been obsessed with that. I've also been obsessed with leadership and the idea of speeches. Have you ever studied any of the great speeches of American or world history?
Not in particular. What you got?
So, in particular, Winston Churchill. Have you ever seen the movie Dunkirk? You've never seen it, right?
No.
Okay. The idea is like early in the war of England. This is when like Nazi Germany had just invaded France, and it was like clear that Nazi Germany was officially bad. Before it was like, yeah, they're horrible, but like they're gonna stay themselves. They start invading other countries, and people start freaking out. They go to France, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe." Imagine today. Imagine like France getting taken over. France. Yeah, it's just like insane. And so England, which is nearby, they were like, "Oh my gosh, now they are coming to us." And so they start officially get into a war and have skirmish in Dunkirk, where the Nazis surround a part of England, and they surround like I think it was like 50,000 or even 100,000 soldiers. And basically, if those people died, the war would have been over. And it was a magical moment where hundreds of ships that were just fishermen, but also the British Navy, they raced over and they grabbed these guys off this island and they saved hundreds of thousands of lives. Whatever. But that's not the important part of my story. But up until that point, England was like fearful. They were imagining.
Yeah, I've spent some time in DC.
Winston Churchill.
I've gotten lost there. I've got found there.
And he was very nervous, but then he goes, screw it.
I found things there. I lost things there.
He gave this speech, and at the end of the speech, he does this in like, I forget what I think it's the House of Parliament. It's like their like physical setting.
Yeah, there's a bunch of tunnels.
We're gonna fight in the beaches. We're gonna fight in the trenches. We're gonna fight in the land, and we will never, ever give up. And he like gave this like amazing speech that basically changed the entire morale of the country. We're talking about
Yeah, look.
and it's just like I've always been very fascinated when there's one
They got
person
a
who can
big
take
tunnel
a
system.
small amount of energy and get everyone else to change their energy. So like, have you ever been to a concert? I used to love watching these Oasis concerts. It would be literally, they were famous. They were famous for helping create like this idea of like a mega concert. They would have
What
250,000
is this for random?
and they're relatively high energy band, but it's just one or two guys singing into a microphone, and they get 250,000 people to like light up and like push that energy back to them. And I'm obsessed with what is that one thing that person has. And
Probably a
that
gym,
amount of energy
probably
to
some
change
community
their
areas.
Or in the case of Winston Churchill, tens of millions of people.
Oh my God,
And
that's
so
good.
I'm like trying to figure out like what words does someone have to use. And like, if you think about Winston Churchill, do you know what he looks like?
Yeah, I'm gonna take photos of him.
Like he's a short, fat kind of drunkard. Like he's not like a good-looking guy. Like he doesn't have like the traditional.
Why is he going on church?
And so
Here we go.
how people do that.
Because you want to just deliver this at work, or what's the like connect the dots for me?
Yeah, because I do want to become a better leader. Like once your company gets to my company, we're only a short, fat kind of drunkard. Like he's not like a good-looking guy. Like he doesn't have like the traditional star good looks or anything like that. And so what I've been trying to study is how people do that.
Because you want to just deliver.
How they do what? What did he say?
50,000 people to like light up. To change their energy. So like, have you ever been to a concert? I used to love watching these Oasis concerts. It'll be literally, they're famous. They were famous for helping create like this idea of like a mega concert. They would have 250,000 people in the audience. And they're relatively high energy band, but it's just one or two guys singing into a microphone, and they get 250,000 people to like light up and like push that energy back to them. And I'm obsessed with what is that one thing that person has, and how do they leverage that amount of energy to impact actually hundreds of thousands, or in the case of Winston Churchill, tens of millions of people. And so I'm like trying to figure out like what words does someone have to use. And like, if you think about Winston Churchill, do you know what he looks like?
He starts berating Churchill. Good old Winston.
Yeah, I'm gonna take photos of him.
Like he's a short, fat kind of drunkard.
Winston's a crazy
He's
name.
not like a good-looking guy. Like he doesn't have like the traditional movie star good looks or anything like that. And so what I've been trying to study is how people do that.
Because you want to just deliver this at work, or what's the like connect the dots for me?
Yeah, because I do want to become a better leader. Like once your company gets, so at my company we're only like 25 or 30 people, but I'm getting to the point now where I'm not doing a lot of the work, and I am having to not motivate people, because a good employee is already motivated. But in order to make a good employee a great employee, you do need to inspire them. Right. And so I've just been trying to figure out how to become a better leader. And so I've been studying some of
We're
the
gonna advertise in the banner ads. We're gonna advertise in the podcast. We're gonna advertise everywhere. We will advertise. You know, what is the like rally cry that you're trying to get people? What would be like? What would be an example? Have you done it yet? Have you tried?
Yeah, like so right now AI is everywhere. And it's making me sick that I am like having to talk to AI all the time, and I'm not having a lot of like relationships in real life. I'm not having what you call these belly-to-belly conversations.
Schrodinger's cat.
What I've noticed with Hampton is once we got people in the same room, once a month to have their conversations with the core meeting, it literally will change their lives. Not because we're particularly special, but just being in a physical setting with people who have been vetted, and you know that you're like-minded interest, and you are indoctrinating them into having what we call the 3 C's: confidentiality, candor, commitment. That will change someone's life, and it changes their life.
Yeah, what was this
in
saying?
small ways. These are entrepreneurs.
1729.
So eventually,
Days to cover.
with everyone else, but just this idea that the world is going one way, yet everyone is so incredibly lonely and sad. What can we do that like solves that, even if it's for a small group of people like entrepreneurs?
Did you see churn like go to zero when you went from digital to in person?
It's crazy. Like on a bad month, it would be like 60s annual churn. Now it's like 80s and 90s.
Wait, 60s meaning so 40% churn? What do you mean by that?
60s retention.
Yes, so 40% would churn every month before?
Annual. It's annual.
Okay. Of your annual membership. Okay, gotcha. And then now it's
Yeah, like
just by making it
85, 90%. Like it's not even, it's like, but there's all this other work of like being crazy about the vetting process. I don't think people realize that thousands of people apply and we let in like 4 or 5% per month. So we do a lot of work. But in real life, does most of the work. The problem is it's a fucking pain in the ass. It's really hard to do. We gotta find these like moderators in all these cities and train them. It's really, really hard. But not even close. Like night and day. All right, I read a ton. I would say almost a book a week. And the reason I read is Second Guide, and you'll see.
So it sounds like one of the things you're doing is you're tying it to a bigger movement, which is what I think what the great leaders do. So you're not saying, hey, we are trying to win, we're trying to grow revenue, because people only get so excited by the sort of financial success or metric success.
See the most shorted.
But when you say, look, the world is going this way,
Shorts
we gotta fight. We gotta fight. I don't want to live in that world. I think that world is messed up. The world where we just get lonelier, sadder, we're only talking to AI, we're not seeing other people, we're just looking digitally. Like, this digital overload is going one way. We're part of the resistance. And that sort of, we're part of the resistance is generally one thing that, like, most leaders do. They tie their, you could play in a football game, a high school football game, but you'll feel like you're going to war and you're fighting for your brothers, and like they took something from you and your family, and you could make it so important when actually it's a Division 3A high school football regular season game that you'll never remember 4 weeks from now, right? But the leader can elevate the importance of what this means, because the meaning, it is what it is. No. It is what you say it means. What you'll actually, what you'll actually feel about it.
And when you were in like social studies classes in like 5th and 6th grade, they used to talk about these Roman emperors, and I don't know if you remember this, but they would often refer to them as orators.
Yeah, orators, yeah.
Which is kind of, I remember thinking like, that's funny. So this person
Just
who
content creators
Yeah.
without the internet.
like if I had an orator in Rome, it was like someone who's standing on a rock and like, hey everyone, here's what we have to do.
Should we rebrand from podcaster to orator?
It's kind of like an interesting take.
Technically, that is what we do.
And you ask yourself, why on earth would an orator, someone who could just speak good, why would they control, like, the entire world? Right. And I started thinking about that obsessively, and I'm like, okay, well, what do the leaders have in common? And most of the time, it is great speeches and great speaking, and I underestimated that for a long time. So I've been trying to figure that out.
So that's been a rabbit hole you've been obsessed with.
I'm shocked that you're not going down that track either. I think you have that. I think that you study it as well. I don't think you get credit enough for studying that. But I'm shocked that doesn't like fascinate you.
It does. It's just what season are you in? Which rabbit hole do you happen to be in right now? That's a good one. I've got it earmarked. That's a great interest to me. But right now I'm interested in a couple other areas. I want to give you one. There's a book that I think a lot of people have heard about, probably even read. I read it, but I had sort of forgotten about this part of it. Die with Zero. And Die with Zero is really like, It's
Yeah,
just
Bill Perkins.
And so what is it about? And I emailed her this passage. I said, here's from the book. It says, death wakes people up, and the closer it gets, the more awake we become. Because when the end is near, that's when we suddenly start thinking, what the hell am I doing? Why did I wait this long? You can't live every day like it's your last. If so, you wouldn't bother studying or visiting the dentist or doing anything that has delayed gratification. But if you delay gratification for too long or indefinitely, it's just too late. You also can't live life as if it's infinite. So we all face the question, what's the best way to allocate our life energy before we die? And here's the principles. So principle 1, timing matters. Some experiences can only be enjoyed at certain times. You can't water ski when you're 90. And in the book, he tells this great story about how his buddy, when he was an investment banker, his buddy was like, let's go backpacking through Europe. I'm down. He's like, awesome. It's going to be a 6-week trip. He's like, 6 weeks? How are we going to get 6 weeks off? He's like, well, we'll last, but they'll probably say no. We'll probably have to quit. And he's like, quit? And he looked at his friend like he's being so reckless. Wow, you're quitting your job to go backpacking through Europe? What a reckless thing to do. What an irresponsible thing to do. I will do the responsible thing and stay in the job. And he talks about when his friend came back, and he immediately just he sees the glow, sees how he's talking about his time abroad. He's like, oh shit, I made a mistake. What I thought was responsible was actually irresponsible because I threw away this time in my 20s where there's only timing matters. There's only one time to go backpacking through Europe and sleep in hostels. And so he actually talks about when he was 32 or something, he finally, gets his promotion he's been waiting for, and he has enough time to take off, and he goes and does that trip.
Bill Perkins, the author.
Yeah, Bill Perkins goes and does the trip.
He's like a poker player, so.
Guess what? It's not as fun to go bumming around in hostels when you're 32, 33 years old. Like, that was a game to be played when I was, 20 to 25. And I missed it. I missed the window. And so timing matters. That's the first thing. Second thing, what to worry about. We can always make more money in the future, but we cannot go back and recapture time. So it makes no sense to let life opportunities pass us for the fear of squandering money. Squandering our lives should be of much greater worth. All right, the last one. Money is life energy. Think of money as the concept of life energy. You trade some life energy working to get some amount of money, maybe $10 an hour. Then when you want to buy a shirt for $30, you don't think about $30. You say, hell no, you want me to go work for 3 hours for this shirt? Similarly, a higher salary doesn't mean more income on an hourly basis. If I'm making $200K a year but only working 20 hours, that's better than making $300K working 40 hours. It's like eating a cookie. One cookie is 1 hour on a treadmill. Is that cookie really worth it?
Just imagine if your credit card, it starts at 100 years old, and every time you buy something, and now goes to 900 years, 900 years in 6 months. It's like, oh shit, that was 6 months. I just paid for that.
If when you checked out, it was like, awesome. Based on your salary, that was 4.5 days of work. So would you like to work 108 hours right now? When would you like to schedule that in? You're like, never mind, just keep the blender, dude. I don't want it. I'm not interested in this. And so I thought there's a lot of good stuff in this book. I actually didn't really read the full book because it's kind of like a book should be a blog type of deal. But the core concepts in the first, let's say 50 to 75 pages, I thought were really, really good. The last one, this one for you. The vast majority of financial fears are completely irrational. There are real financial fears. They do exist. And then there are irrational or illogical financial fears, like rich people who still worry about money, even though the math clearly shows they're fine and will always be fine. And I think this is also true for a lot of people.
But I hate that advice though, because you didn't, I'm not going to criticize the book because I think maybe it goes into like actual tactics, but it's sort of like selling with a young guy who's struggling to date someone, like just be yourself. It's like, well, but myself sucks, so you maybe instead just teach me how to be a better self. So, telling someone not to worry, like telling an alcoholic, just try harder, So
what is the solution?
Fuck, I don't know. Years of therapy? I'm not sure exactly, but I haven't found it. No, I have found it. It's just get richer. What the?
Well, I don't think you have it. Johnson, why are you naked? Because my t-shirt sucks. Look at Gibson. He's wearing a shirt.
He's apartments in Hawaii.
I don't know. I think you have to. There is a point. I have hit a point where I'm like, okay, there's enough for this current lifestyle. That's for sure.
And by the way, the final visual he has is that most people live their life like this. They build a well and they start to pump water. And as the well fills, they use a cup to scoop out a small amount of water. They take a sip and go right back to pumping, higher and higher. And at the end of their lives, after a lifetime of pumping, they see they are still thirsty. They spent their whole life pumping rather than drinking, which was the reason they started pumping in the first place.
When I see these things, a lot of times the takeaway that people have is that I shouldn't work or I shouldn't do something. And I think that that's not the takeaway that he implies or what he wants the takeaway to be, but that's the takeaway that a lot of people have. And I think that that is such a bad idea to like not work. I do think that there is something magical about 30 to 50 hours a week. There is something magical where you have to have a thing that you are contributing to with others for a shared mission. And so when I see this, I don't want people to think, young people to think, I should get rich and not work. I think that's not the goal. I think you should have a mission in life that it aligns with yourself, but you have to contribute to society. Otherwise, you're just going to feel empty.
Yeah, I think the idea here isn't work or don't care about money or care about money. It's those are sort of false choices. It's really the idea of the way most people live their life is. I'm speaking from an overachiever type, probably a little type A. You're probably pretty hungry for success. You might be slightly impatient, right? These are, I would say, common disorders of the NFL listener group, right? I know this because I am one. And I would say the trick is, for most of us, we basically work, and then we try to fill in some life around the gaps. And the idea, I think, of what he says and what I picked up from Jesse is, look, you got to decide what you want to do in life. Schedule that. Don't worry, the work is always there. The work will fill in all the cracks around those things. But if you just wait till you have large gaps of free time, or it's the right time to go do that thing you always wanted to do, work just is like a liquid or a gas. It just expands to fill the container you give it. And so you have to be really conscious of how you let that fill the container. Like the analogy I use with Jesse is, you have a jar.
Jesse Itzler,
yeah. You have a jar. And imagine for your year you have, next to the jar's empty right now, but you have sand, you have small rocks and big rocks. And the sand is going to be like all your day-to-day life routines. It's going to be your errands, it's going to be your Zoom calls, it's going to be your meetings, whatever. That's the sand. It's stuff that you got to do. You got to do a lot of it, but you're not going to look back a year from now and remember any of those. Your Zoom calls don't go in your sort of your lifelong memories or your photo albums. Like it doesn't make it there, right? But you got to do something. Then you have the small rocks, which are like little initiatives, little efforts, and then you have the big rocks, the things that really matter to you. Taking that family trip, or going and visiting your parents. Even though you don't have to, maybe you don't have time to do it, but hey, they're getting older and you want to go visit them. Or it's learning that new skill or whatever it is, launching that project. Those are your big rocks. And if you put the sand in the jar first, and then you say, great, now I'm going to put the big rocks in, they don't go in at all. But if you put the big rocks in and you say, I'm doing these have this much space, they're in here. And then you fill as much sand as you can. It turns out you can fit the whole fit all the things into the container if you do it in the right order. The sand will fill in all the cracks and crevices. But the big rocks don't work that way. So you just have to make sure you sort of figure out, what are my big rocks? What do I actually really, really care about? And then how do I put them in the jar first? Not do them first, but even just schedule them first so that my life doesn't just become, a jar full of sand.
Dude, that's so funny. That's the same analogy that the book Traction, that teaches you how to use the EOS system. They use the exact same analogy on why you should set goals and work hard and all this stuff.
Yeah, because it's like somebody did this to us in high school or something. It's like a magic trick. It's like, try to
Just a
these
big
things.
lamp.
When you do it in one order, it looks like it's physically impossible. You put it in the other order, it all fits in. And you're like, oh, I didn't need a bigger jar. I just needed to put things in the right order.
What else did you read this year that you liked?
There's this Howard Marks blog post that I mentioned called Selling Out is the name of the title. Have you read this blog post?
That's a new one. Did that one ever more recently?
In January of 2022.
Oh, that's cool. What did he say?
And it's a conversation with his son, Andrew. So it's Howard Marks, who came on the pod, it was awesome. His son, Andrew's also a great investor, and so they were talking, basically they're like, the basic idea in investing is buy low, sell high. Okay, great. But when? When do you actually sell on the high? Right? Did you sell when it goes up a little bit? When it goes up a little more? When you wait? You hold it forever? How do you actually do this? And he's talking to his son about it. He's like, hey, you have this position. Do you think you should sell?
Here we go.
No. And he's like, well, is there any price that you would sell? But certainly there's got to be some price in this idea. And so they have this sort of back and forth, almost like Socratic dialogue. He basically says that the premise of the blog post is, he's like, he's like, after lots of thought, I've realized that there's only two reasons people sell.
Building a great developer experience starts with
A lot of
understanding
property companies.
Swarmia makes it easy to collect and analyze
Because things are up or because things are down. And he's like, that sounds a little silly, but let me explain. And he's like, you could sell because it's up, as in you're taking profits, you're maybe afraid that the gains will go away, and so you want to do that. But like, it certainly doesn't make sense to just sell just because it's up, right? That would be like, you would be selling, let's say you own Amazon back in 1999, and it's $5 a share and it goes to $9 and you sell, like obviously that wouldn't have been a good decision. And so like, simply saying sell when it's up doesn't make any sense, because how far up and just always, that doesn't work. And selling when it's down is, usually a emotional reaction to things. Panic, fear, sort of disappointment leads people to sell. The whole market gets pessimistic, and so you do too. So clearly just selling because it's down isn't a good idea. So, okay, so then when do you sell? And basically he talks about the concept of basically it's a second opportunity cost. So all investing is about relative selection. So, two things, you sort of look at two things. One, this is all going to sound very basic, but the reality is that myself as an investor and most people as investors don't actually act in accordance with this very simple logic. So the first part of the logic is you initially invest in something because you have some thesis. Well, over time, you'll either feel more validated about that thesis or less. Like, more information will come out. Does the reason you bought this thing, does that feel more true today or less true today than it did at the time? So maybe you believe that this would be the best thing ever, then they release the product and it's not so great. So now, your confidence level should go down when that happens. So the first part is like, is the primary principles behind why you invested either more true or less true? The second thing is, all investing is relative. So putting $100 in one stock is...
Wait, sorry, but was he saying that is what was he saying for point one? Is that the right way or wrong way? That your opinion shouldn't change?
No, they should change. As new information comes out, you update your thinking and you say, well, if the reason I bought the investment is no longer true, then I need to either have had a new reason to invest, or I should not be invested in that thing.
Versus just sticking with it because of cognitive bias of
Sunk cost fallacy or cognitive bias, trying to convince yourself that no, there's... Despite all this evidence, I still believe, that it's all wrong. The facts are wrong, and so it goes on to reality. Well, the second part of it is, it's all about relative selection, so opportunity cost. So, if you were not invested in this, you would be invested in something else. So do you have, more conviction and a better prospect investing in something else than you do in this, right? And so that's the second thing. So he's talking about there's a third factor, which is if you're too concentrated. He's talking about with you're overweight this one thing. He says,
Figure this out.
his son is basically saying, well, that's true, but it depends on your goals. Right now, trimming or selling would mean selling something that I have immense comfort in, based on my bottoms-up assessment of it, and moving into something I feel less good about and know less well. And to me, I would rather own a smaller number of things which I feel strongly about, because I will only have a few good insights over my lifetime, so I have to maximize the value that I have from it. And this has tended to be true across most people who are active investors, is that you only have a few good ideas. Whether this is angel investors who the vast majority of their portfolio comes from 2-3 bets that they made out of potentially hundreds. Or it's George Soros saying the most important thing in investing is position size, because you're going to be wrong a bunch. I think his hit rate was estimated to be about 30% correct, so 70% wrong. And he's like, so the key is that the 30% correct, I need to be correct in a big enough way where it's going to make, outsized returns. And when I'm wrong, I need to be wrong in smaller ways, right? So position sizing. The game is all about sizing. I don't care if you're right if it's too small. And Stanley Druckenmiller, who's now this legendary investor, says that's the number one thing he learned from Soros. He came in with a great idea and he expected Soros to say it's too risky or whatever. And he's like, well, if you're so confident, we should be betting 10 times the size. Either you're wrong about your thesis or you're wrong about your size. You can't be right about both right now, because your size is too small on what you're saying you believe in.
The reason I love talking to people like Howard Marks, and I would love to have any of these investors on, not because I particularly care about investing, I find it mildly interesting, but it's whatever, it's fine. But I care more about what they can teach me about how to live a better life. Because when I hear you like talking about like choosing this with investing, I'm like, oh, I made that mistake with this relationship. Therefore, my flaw is thinking. My thinking is flawed. Did you have any takeaways of how this could apply to life other than just through investing money?
No, I was thinking about more for money. But to be honest, but I mean, his solution. It's not like he gives you like some formula at the end, right? He says the bottom line. We should base our investments based on our own estimates of the asset potential. So that's like you have to think about the asset potential. That's the reason you invest, not because it's up or down. We should not sell just because the position has risen. There could be a reason to limit the size or how concentrated you want to be, but there's no scientific way to calculate what that limit should be. It's a personal choice. And he goes, so in the end, it comes down like
Why are you doing this now?
entirely to judgment. So it was less about like how do I apply this philosophy to everything. It's like, damn, dude, everything. Judgment is the ultimate lever. Just like you're saying, with relation, who you pick to marry, where you choose to live, what you choose to invest in, where you go with your career. Like these are all judgment calls that we put very little thought into. I would say, most people are pretty thoughtless about a lot of those decisions, or we put very little effort into becoming better at judgment. Like if I asked you today, how do you become better at judgment? And how much time did you spend this year working on that muscle? No, it's like none consciously, right? So consciously, you're spending no time on probably the most important muscle to us, to our like long-term happiness, right? Your decisions become your destiny. So how do you make better decisions?
Do you study that?
Do I study it? Well, I do a couple of things. I don't know if I study it, but I write down all my decisions. So I have this thing called
Harlan.
register. It's a table, and I write down two things. When I'm making a decision, I write down what it is and why I'm making it, and my like confidence level in the decision. And then I go back and I assess the decision register. And there's two things that come out. First, I see was I right or wrong in that. And the other thing was what were important decisions that I didn't even realize were important at the time. Like going on a whim to that conference. That felt like a small decision at the time. Actually, this amazing relationship came out of it, and that led to this, huge outcome for me.
That's a good way to be retroactive. Explain to me how you said you write down what it is. Part of solving the problem is defining the problem. I buy into that. But how can I use your framework for making a better decision in the future versus just retroactive, looking back and trying to adjust my...
So here's I call it the decision survey. So here's the actual questions I have in a Google Doc. So first, what is the decision? Write it in the length of a tweet. So I'm deciding to do X, right? So actually write it down. Then two, check in on your feelings. So what am I feeling right now while I'm making this decision? Is it extreme fear? Some fear, neutral. Some greed, extreme greed. So like what is my emotional state when I'm making this decision? And I know if I'm on either end of the spectrum, on the far end of the greed spectrum or up in the fear spectrum, I shouldn't be making the decision.
It's like going to the grocery store hungry.
Exactly. Then I write this. I say, what is the one decisive reason to do this? Blended reasons are bad reasons. So learned this from Reid Hoffman, a LinkedIn guy, or I think he learned it from Peter Thiel, which is, if you want to go do something, you don't say, well, it'd be good because, he gives the example of like, oh, should I go speak at this conference? I say, well, it'd be good because I've never visited Canada before, and
By the way, I'm better than all these fun
it'd be a
managers
good reason to work on my speech,
combined.
speaking skills, and, it'll be a good chance to spend time with this
That's
person.
what I wanted to say. He was doing this real estate, Seaport.
If you hear that tone, you're about to make a bad decision.
But you're saying bad decision meaning a bad outcome, or you're deciding on the wrong thing? Like, does bad decision mean I'm saying no when I should say yes, or does bad decision mean I shouldn't even
Poor
approach it?
judgment process, the poor use of the skill of judgment. So, a better way to make decisions
Seaport
is
stock.
right, making decisions. Because the outcome might work out, right? It's like with poker. Sometimes you play deuce seven offsuit. It's a bad decision. You shouldn't have made the bet, but you got lucky. Two sevens came out, and you used a trick. Okay, cool. You don't want to let that fool you into thinking, well, I should always play deuce seven. It's my lucky hand, right? That's what really bad players would do. Same way where there's people who fold pocket kings because they got beat once. It's like, well, no, you should always just put your money in with good odds, and then let things play out based on the probability, and over time it'll work in your favor, right? It's just, you can't do what's called resulting, where you judge every decision only on the result.
What about the infused?
The input, not the output. Which is easier in poker because the odds are known than it is in life because the odds are unknown, but you got to do your best to do it either way. So anyways, I try to write the one decisive reason. So if I'm going to go get that talk, it's literally because I want to go spend time with this person and they live in Canada, and that's why I'll go give that talk. That's why I'll take the trip. And if that one reason is not enough to do it, then there's really no reason to do it. So you should have one reason that's strong enough to do the thing, and everything else is bonus, but you can't count it. You gotta, and what I do is I make my strongest reason for and my strongest reason against, and then they joust. So it's like I write the single reason I would do it and the single reason I wouldn't do it, and I look at those and I say, who would win this? If that's an arm wrestling match, who wins?
Does each of those arguments have? For example, it could be like, I want to be around my family versus this one thing could change. I can make a lot of money because it's a new customer.
First, it's got to be honest. That's the first thing, because we're honest sometimes about why we're doing certain things.
Yeah, call me like crazy about that.
Precise, so it can't be very easy because your brain can't even understand it. And then the last is, it's got to figure out, you got to tie it to the value. So right now, is your top value making more money, getting in great shape, or is it spending time with your loved ones? Right? They're all good things.
It's a
but
tie
like, do
code.
you have one that's valued more? And secondly, do you have a good substitute? So, okay, I could do this and spend that time with this person, but couldn't I just go hang out with them in the back? Right? Couldn't I
Look at
couldn't I
that.
just call them and
Shout out to
like
William.
a valid substitute that doesn't have the same cost? And if there is a valid substitute, you do it. Okay, secondly, I write down what are the secondary benefits? And then I ask again, if I took all the secondary benefits away, would I still make the decision? These are all related to don't do preliminary reasons. The number one thing that we try to do, especially smart people, because we love making lists. So we make like long lists.
Like, well, you will a lot of times look at it, they go pros and cons, and they go, well, the cons list is way longer, therefore that's right.
Exactly. Right. Or they just don't even make a decision. They write a big pros and cons list and just paralyze themselves.
Oh,
I know.
gosh.
It's too complicated. Right? And like that's why you don't want to do that. So what triggered the decision? What made you want to do this basically? Which is usually like a sneaky way.
$11 billion in revenue. Haven't heard about them. Why haven't I heard about them? What do they do?
I wanted to. It's like FOMO or something like that. 7 is what alternatives did I consider? Which is usually just a test of did you consider any alternatives, or are you just trying to do the first thing that you thought of? And that's it. It's a sign of shallow thinking, which results in bad decisions. Is it a reversible decision? If it's a reversible decision, good. I don't need to worry about it as much. If it's irreversible, I should think about it a lot. What's the upside if I'm right? What's the downside if I'm wrong? What follow-up is important to make sure this one decision would be a higher chance of being a success? So that's kind of like, you could almost
I have to read
decision
their
with a decision
report.
if you do it with enough intensity, if you follow up and follow through and do secondary actions. When and how will I know if this is a success? And then lastly, what do I think is going to happen? Just write down a quick prediction of the future.
Did you create this?
Yeah,
It's pretty good.
thank you. A lot of effort.
Liberty,
I don't
LPT,
one
stock.
third of the time I should, and I would say the average person does it 0% of the time. And the reason why is because it's like going to church or something. It's like, oh man, I gotta go do this thing. I know it's the right thing.
What is
to
this
do.
about to go crazy this year?
But it takes a little bit of effort, and it's
I
like
just
I'm
found out.
critical of my own thoughts. And it's so
Alright,
much
I'm gonna have to look more at that.
not check
Follow
those
it.
things.
Might have just found a double. Seth Clark. Who is that, number 10? No, this is number 10.
There's this like, I don't know what it's called, a quadrant, four squares, you know, the graph, and it's like high urgency versus low urgency, and then highly important and not important. And I think the idea is like you have to allocate a certain amount of time to things that are not urgent and are very important.
Right.
But that bucket tends to get
He likes investing in the UK, London.
important and urgent,
Ooh.
and because of that, you don't invest enough time. That has
Yeah, why does he like
that
London so
a lot of
much?
things in the future. And what's really fascinating is that we're discussing like how do you get good at making decisions, which is like one of like the top 10 things on earth you could ever potentially learn, right? Like, and yeah, I have never actually found that. But I tried to read. Charlie Munger is like famous for being like an interesting thinker. In his when he died recently, they wrote an article about him, and he like had these funny quotes where he was like, you know, it was really hard in life because I just knew I was so much better than everyone else. And even though I talked a lot, I wanted to talk so much more to show how much better I was than everyone else. So he's this like really, really cocky guy, but his like thinking is very good. And I like tried to read Poor Charlie's Almanac like 5 different times, and I just find it incredibly boring. But now that I think of it, you find it boring too?
Yeah. I'm like, I should love this. On paper, everything about this, I should love it. And then you read it, and that's like, I'm reading about Charlie's grandkid. Do I care about this? No. And it's just a little slow to give me some, like, I need some zingers every few minutes.
It's very textbook. It's very textbook.
Well, he has like this speech, which is like, him and a lot of other people really love these like cognitive biases. I think he gave his talk on like the top reasons of human misjudgment. Right, so it's about this exact topic, and I've listened to that, it's good. But I find it pretty hard to memorize like 23 cognitive biases and carry them around in my head all the time, and like identify them when they're happening, and then like find some root cause. And I find a much easier thing is this sort of like Socratic method of like, well, what are you doing? I'm doing this. What makes you think that that's a good idea? Do this. How do you know if this works? I don't know. But like that Socratic method, to me, is like just a much clearer indicator of when I know what I'm doing and I'm making a good decision or I'm making a bad decision, and it helps me avoid things in the moment. The other thing is just time. So like, don't try to make a decision in the same, in the same
Carl.
gathering information, or don't sleep on
Let's
it.
see what Carl's holding. Carl.
Cool down period. If you can't.
What you doing, Carl?
Same thing with like any impulse control, right? If you just add a time delay, you can avoid it.
This is interesting. Utility services.
I used to do book reports on all the books that I read, and I still occasionally do it. But before, it was like, I'm going to read this one book this quarter, and I'm going to read the bibliography and like all the cited sources, and I'm going to master this, and then I'm going to write a book report on it. And one quarter, it was like the 48 Laws of Power, because I was like, well, if you like learn about like power, right, then I could see when people are trying to manipulate me, and if I want to get powerful, it's like to memorize it. And I was like, 48 of them. How on earth am I supposed to memorize all of them? And so for the longest time, if you Google 48 Laws of Power summary, I had this Google Doc that I wrote, and I wrote all my thoughts, and I summarized all 48 laws, and I shared the document with people. But when you share a Google Doc, you sometimes put like share link to anyone. You forget that that's searchable on Google. And for the longest time, I think it was like 3 years, my Google Doc was #1. And every time I logged in, there would be hundreds of people on this document. And it was so funny that it became #1. And then what I did was I made it so people could comment. And so people started commenting on it, and they would add like interesting like takeaways and stuff. So it was like a crowdsourced thing. It was actually really cool. But I was obsessed with like, how do I memorize this stuff? And now that you're talking about this Charlie Almanac thing, I'm like, I've just said I've tried to read this like tons of times, and right now I'm telling myself and everyone else listening that this is important, but I have not done it. I need to do this. This is actually so fascinating. And a really interesting thing is, I asked myself, do I wish I would have done this 3 years ago? Yes, I should probably do it like immediately then, because I would be less regretful if I do it in the future. And so this is funny that we're talking about.
Well, Naval has this thing about reading that changed kind of the way I think about reading. So I used to approach it similar to you, which is like, I'm reading to get information. I'm reading to learn something. So I was like, this book contains stuff. And the goal is to get the stuff from the book to be stuff in my head, right? And that was hard. And sometimes I'd be like, this stuff isn't that great, or, oh my God, how am I going to memorize all this? How am I going to remember any of this? Do I remember stuff I read recently? No, I don't. Does this even work? And Naval put it differently. He goes, when you read, it's like rubbing two sticks together. All you're trying to do is create a little bonfire in your brain. So he's like, you're looking to spark a thought, an idea. So you read not to get all the stuff from the book to be all the stuff in your head. You're reading to just catalyze some spark, some thought, some realization, some thought process, some new idea in your mind. And if you look at books as creating that spark in your mind, you look at them very, very differently. And so you don't need to you often don't even read the whole book. You don't feel any guilt towards that. You don't need to remember things from the book. The book just needs to be a consistent tool to get you to think more interestingly and think more deeply in the moment itself. And if you just do that habitually, you'll just consistently be a good thinker. And once I started doing that, or once I kind of went into reading with that mindset, I enjoyed it a lot more because it was way less pressure. There was way less obligation. I didn't feel obligated to finish. I didn't feel obligated to remember. All I felt obligated to do was ask, like, what thoughts does this spark in my head? And when I started paying attention to that, like, it changed, how I read.
Did you read anything else that you like this year?
I read a lot of stuff. I mean, fiction. There's this book called The Will of the Many. Highly recommend. If you like stuff that's in the kind of like Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, like fantasy, sci-fi, like it's not sci-fi, it's more fantasy. But it's basically this book that's like this kind of it's like mirrors like the Roman political structure. So like when there was like there's like a hierarchy. And so, The Will of the Many was a good book, and it's a series. The second book just came out, Strength of the King. That one, I'm into this series right now. This is a good series. And for me, one of the great joys of life is like getting into one of these like fictional series, like whether it's like a Game of Thrones or like one of these different ones. But they're pretty hard to find. They're pretty hard to get into because it's a lot of world building. When you do,
I should have looked at this before. This picture feels familiar. I don't know why.
You know, check.
Maybe not.
Mystery novels, or what does he do? Is it like War, like Tom Ryan or whatever?
Yeah. It's called The Terminalist, and we actually had him on My First Million.
The James Reese series, which starts with The Terminal List, which is like the bestseller.
Dude, it's crazy. So this guy we had him on the pod. I didn't want you to come because I wanted to nerd out with him, and I was embarrassed at like how much I like love this book. Because it's one of these things where you read one of these books and you like fall in love with like these fake things, and you like don't want to like tell anyone else that it's fake things. Like have you ever read a book and you're sad it's over, and you're like, I have to remind myself that this person isn't real. Like, there's been times where, like, I've read a fiction book and I'm, like, Googling. I, like, need to see, like, did other people ever draw this character, or did an actor ever play them, so I can, like, get to know them further. That's how it was with this guy. And Jack Carr.
What'd you read? Which books did you read?
Like 7 of them. He's got, like, I think he's got, like, 6 or 7. I read almost all of them. And he's got a bunch of them. He's one of the more prolific guys. I don't know how he writes so much, but he
came on the podcast. What was like? Is there like the one thing you remember from what he said, or did he say anything really insightful?
So listen to this. He was a Navy SEAL, where he was bad. He was a bad to the bone dude, and he basically started writing.
72.
Because writing is not like a very typical masculine thing. Writing fiction, writing stories. But this guy is. He's a masculine dude. And he starts writing these like
he writes like this. Like his grip on the pen is
he's like picking his teeth with like a big knife. Like but he's like a pretty hardcore dude, and yet when he talked to us, he was very soft.
It's like this.
So and the book series is basically a Navy SEAL who was wronged, and he goes to the end of the world in order to wrong the right. And it just so happens that it gets into different like adventures, 7 different times, 7 different books. It's sort of like James Bond, like how on earth
See what Soros was on, let's see. Wasn't this just one of the most short of the
this
list?
guy was. Yet at the same time, he was like very.
He's got a put just in
He
case.
had killed a lot of people before, and he was like this pretty hardcore dude, but he was so gentle, and I found it really.
Forward. Radiant.
That
Got some crazy investments.
Well, this is
B&E.
like we have someone on, and
got a
you're
note on
almost
the
like a feeler rather than a listener. Like you're more into their vibe and their persona. Always, it's always the first thing. Which is cool. Like it's different than like the way I operate. But like I find that often when I ask you about somebody, it's always like the way they were, not what they said. Which is cool, and I think actually probably a lot of people pick that, like, that is what we pick up on people, is like the unspoken, but you are like particularly in tune with that. So
I felt that way with John Morgan. I'm like, I don't even remember half the stuff that he said, but like he had this cowboy vibe that I was into.
All vibes.
I am all vibes. That's an interesting observation. I do that all the time, where I won't, like, I don't even remember what him and I talked about. I can't remember anything. But then you will do these things constantly, where you recall these stories, and they're very minute. Like, I've been with you, and I've heard you retell the story, and you'll be like, and he set this thing down, and he looked at us, and he said this thing, and I'm like, he did? I don't even remember that. How do you remember that one? Like, I don't think of those details. Or like, we've been with like, you told stories about God, and you'll like retell a story with a detail that I had no idea, but I just remember him as like a really nice guy.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting also to figure out like.
Oh, yeah. This is a packaging company.
Right, like, I wonder how intentional you could be about that. And be like, how, like, can I change like my little like metal detector here? You know what I mean? Like, could I actually improve
Look at
it?
the
Be more
financials.
intentional about what it is, or is it just like that's innate? It's very hard to change.
That's
I'm
bullshit.
curious about that.
It's sort of like people who say they're bad at names. And I'm like, no, you're not. You just don't care. So, like, someone said that to me. I was like, I'm bad at names. And they're like, no, you just don't care. And that bothered me. And so I was like, okay, I care. So whenever I meet someone, so if someone recognizes me on the street, I'll say, what's up, man? What's your name?
Kevin?
Okay, Kevin. Where are you from, Kevin? You're from Idaho? Okay, Kevin from Idaho. Man, it was so good to meet you. Thanks, Kevin, man. Like, I'll, like, you, like, repeat it a bunch of times, and then I'll associate with where he's from. And so I will always remember someone's name, all because someone made me feel bad. And so I think I should change to like how I remember like certain details. And the way that I think you have to remember those details that you're referring to is you have to remember the story.
It all has to be the story.
So Eric Jorgensen is another thing I read this year. So Eric Jorgensen, he runs around and he wrote the Navalmanach. So he wrote a book that compiled like all of Naval's wisdom.
Dude, I think he sold 1 million copies of that. Is that true?
I think he sold a lot more than that.
More than 1 million copies?
Yeah.
How many books have sold more than 1 million?
He's made a lot of money off that book, and it's great because the funny thing is the genre of that book.
I gotta write all these
is
down,
in his
too.
own words. In his own words.
I have so many fonts in my head.
Himself, he compiles what Naval said without adding any of his own commentary. Naval has this philosophy of like you open source your material, you let other people sort of fork it, remix it, and like your ideas spread. Like what more do you want than your ideas to spread?
This is a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, right. So
There's so many fonts out there.
He sent me like an advanced copy of his Elon book, and I was excited and I cracked it open. And one thing that I like right away is, you know, smart by Eric, which is he puts something that you don't already know about Elon at the front, just to at least signal to you there's going to be shit in here that you didn't already know. Assuming you're like an Elon general like fanboy or you know you're in the tech bubble already. If he was like Elon likes to think from first principles, I'm like I know. I read all this shit before. But it's Elon talking about memory. And he's like, yeah, like when I was a kid, I learned how to do these like memory palaces. He's like, you can remember pretty much anything. If you learn that like memory is a skill and there's like a way to do it.
Is that like walking through a house?
Yeah, like, you know, like the idea of a memory palace, like you like create like a physical 3D, you know, structure in your mind. And then you sort of link the thing to a room or a location, a visual object, and then you create a little bit of like a story of like walking through from one to the next. Like,
So like the people who could memorize like all the cards, they're like the king is like a real king, and the number 7 is a house. There's a king in a house. You meet the queen, that's a wife. The king
he
is in a
lived
house.
on Seven's Lane, and on Seven's Lane, his wife, the queen, she loved diamonds, and so she, yeah, and you do that, and that's how you sort of build this thing. So it's like Elon talking about like memory palaces, and I was like, this is great. I'm just give me more Elon stuff. I'm happy to get, you know, an unlimited buffet of like new Elon anecdotes and nuggets. It's just like how rare is that, right? So I thought that was pretty cool. And in general, his book is really good. It's gonna be good.
I can't believe he has sold that many copies in that book. That is absolutely insane.
So one of the topics I was gonna do today is a work smarter, not harder topic. And Eric is an example of this. So how do you write a best-selling book that sells millions of copies? Well, what if I told you it's none of your ideas and none of your words? Would that interest you? It's like a way smarter way to write a bestseller, right? So Eric doing that. There's this incredible interview that came out. There's a clip that came out. Did you hear it? It's Akon talking about his music.
No, what did he say?
So Akon, the rapper, he was on a podcast and he told the story. He's like, they were like, dude, so you had a crazy career. You know, they were talking about his Guinness Book of World Records that he owns for ringtones. He tells the story. He's like, yeah, man. He's like, I was recording music, and at the time, the way we sold music was you would sell your single on iTunes, and it'd be $1.99 for your 4-minute song. He's like, but then I would walk around, and I saw everybody had a phone, and they all had like a ringtone. They had the song as their thing. So I asked him, I said, hey, do you get to pick what that is? They're like, yeah. He goes, how much did that cost? Is it free? And then they go, no, you pay for it. $4.99. It's $4.99. A 4-minute song is $1.99. 10-second ringtone is $4.99. He goes, and even better, he goes, I called my lawyer, I said, hey, check my contract with the record label. What's the cut on ringtones? He's like, calls him back, he said, Akon, there's nothing about ringtones in here. There's nothing about digital anything. There's nothing for ringtones. He goes, yeah, say less. So he hangs up the phone and he goes, I started making music, songs that were meant to be ringtones. Every song I did, I would focus on how is this a ringtone? And so Mr. Lonely became the #1 ringtone in the world. And he wrote that song to be a ringtone. He's like, I would write the song with a ringtone in mind, I would record it with a ringtone in mind, I would chop it up and make it really easy for these songs to be ringtones. And he's like, I broke the Guinness Book of World Records. I sold 11 million ringtones. He goes, $4.99, that's $55 million of gross sales on ringtones. And he's like, I became the ringtone king. And then he's like, then the next time they tried to redo my contract, they tried to slip in, oh, and ringtone sales. He's like, let's take that out right there. Nope. Yeah, that's not going in the contract. We're going to have to renegotiate a separate deal on that. I just thought it was brilliant. The Akon ringtone, work smarter, not harder. How do you sell a 10-second song for 5 times the price, for 2 times the price as a 4-minute song?
I so remember like being 14 and hearing girls that had that on there. I'm gonna put that on as my ringtone now.
I don't even know if you do ringtones. Does that still work?
Yeah. Because I had
Nobody has a ringtone now.
No, I did. If you called by, it was a remix version of the Nokia one, and it actually had beats. It started off like a normal, like.
Can you just like theme back? Can you just bring ringtones back? I feel like if I was the music industry, the #1 thing I would try to do is bring ringtones back.
Well, do you know what I hear? Let me tell you what I'm bringing back. In my house, I bought a DVD player. And an activity, because I don't let my kids watch TV, but I'm letting them like sometimes on Saturday when we're like if it's just me watching 2 kids and I'm overwhelmed, I'm like I need like something, but I don't want to turn YouTube on because I don't like the ads and stuff. And so I've got a DVD player, and there's a thrift store down the street from my house, and there's DVDs, and I will find the DVD, and it's incredibly fun to like put the DVD in there. And there's this new toy. Have you seen this toy called
It's the little red thing, right?
Alright, that was boring. We just read one down. See if Under Armour's in this. They've been buying Under Armour recently.
Called Tony's.
What is it? There's 2 of them. There's one that starts with a Y as well. So it's called Tony's.
They follow both into that.
It's a box, and then you put a character on top, like a record, and then it just starts to play songs. But
They're all from 930, so maybe
you
not.
don't have a 2G. It's actually only a 5G. That's my story. That's with the Tony's.
It doesn't connect.
It doesn't connect. You gotta have 2G. You gotta have less G's.
I have too many G's. Like, I don't even have, like, 5G. I've got one about that, I think. But they, it's an incredible toy. Like, I'm playing with this, and so I'm actually on the hunt for a boombox. I want to buy a boombox where you just put the CD in and a cassette tape and click play. It's so fun. We've had so much fun in my house, like, doing some of this stuff.
Tony's, these guys crush, by the way. They do, like... like hundreds of millions. So Tony's, let's see, is this the right thing? Yeah, 510 million euros last 12 months. 510 million euros on this kid's boombox. Is that anything?
Tony's, the other one is Yodo. That's one I got. Y-O-T-O. Have you seen Yodo?
No.
It's like the same thing. I don't know how they're different. But I just remember one time I typed in Yodo and it said like Yodo versus Tony's.
127 million in revenue. Are you joking? What's going on?
Crazy, right? It's an incredible toy.
It's ridiculous. It makes me mad.
Why? It's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, that's what makes me mad. That the brilliance was not mine.
Dude, I followed this guy on Instagram now who started Poppy. I don't know how he came on my feed, but I saw him and I thought it was me. He looks just like me, but he's better looking. Have you seen what he looks like?
Hold on. Take a drink?
Yeah, Poppy Founder, the man. It's a husband and wife. Look him up.
Let's see. So you thought this was you?
No, click on video. Go to his Instagram. Yes. Go to his Instagram right now. I'm telling you. Look at the videos. I was like, am I really going to CPG guy or what? I said, want to do a video together? We look alike. And he said, could be funny. Let's do it.
He's got a podcast?
No, I don't know if he has a podcast, but he just like does Instagram shit.
Mad? This guy's taking everything he works for.
Yeah. There can only be one. And I was shocked at just like, do you know that Poppy sold for like $2 or $3 million? And it started out as a probiotic soda. That's like the worst idea ever.
He lives in Austin? Oh my god, this guy he's you.
Yeah. If you want to trade spots, we can talk. He just crushed it on that. And it's like the ultimate hack. When you start a company with your wife and it works and you both get all of the equity.
Yeah, that's great.
Is that it? Is that the pod?
Alright, that's it.
That's it. That's the pod.
Wholly suspicious, but the fact that they solicited and only got one bid received is a little unusual. That second sentence.
Well,
there.
no.
But we are on both channels. For those that don't know, we're on Real Baron Podcast on YouTube. We are on Ian Carroll Show on YouTube as well.
Yes, sir.
Is it called Ian Carroll Show? As soon as I said that.
It is. I keep thinking about changing it, but it's still Ian Carroll Show to this day.
You know, I was on my show was Baron Coleman, and then I went to Real Baron Podcast about the time you found me, and now I want to go back to Baron Coleman and someone else picked it up.
They'll do that to you. We'll get you.
They have 2 subscribers. But guys, we got a big show lined up. I do not have my traditional opening because Ian's here, and I did not want him sitting here watching me read the screen for 10 minutes. We talked about maybe it would be cool to have Ian do an opening and me watch him do it for 10 minutes. But
We could both do an opening one of these days.
we could do it like the Beastie Boys, pass it back and forth.
Yeah, now we're talking.
Every other line. But we want a recap for everybody. I really want to recap sort of the Charlie Kirk universe, the Charlie Kirk investigation, figure out where we are on it, but also give people a unique back and forth spin on where each of the items is. So there's different buckets of the Charlie Kirk investigation. This is something the guy I really like to follow. You and I were talking about this afternoon, Jason Goodman, who I really like his personality. I think he provides a great voice to a lot of different issues. But he's loving the drone issue, and I'm like, Jason, I had no time to look into drones. This is not something I've had any time to explore. I'm looking at, gunshots, I'm looking at shrapnel, I'm looking at the doctor, I'm looking at, planes exploding in West Tennessee. I don't have time to look
Trying
into
to become an expert at tracking planes.
I'm not as
Just
good
a
at
million different directions to go with this investigation.
it. Do you want to preview what you might be working on relative to tracking?
Maybe like I think that right now it's like in a state of complete disarray. 'Cause I was trying to load a whole bunch of Fort Huachuca flights into it, so we'll tease it another time. But
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that like you're saying, there's all these different directions of investigation, and we've gotten so far down so many of them that we kind of need a not just a recap, but like a recondensing of what do we know, what do we not know, what was disproven and what was proven, and where like a lot has been coming out with Candace's recent 2 episodes today and yesterday, and things that happened over break that adds a lot of context to old stuff and pushes some of the old stuff a little bit further without necessarily people realizing.
Yeah, she had a good show today. I thought she dropped a lot of really interesting points. We can open up a couple of those as we go. I think the number one dividing line, because I keep hearing news people say this, I keep hearing people on right wing and left wing say this. The overarching question, to me, the entire investigation divides on was Charlie Kirk shot. 100%. Did something external to Charlie Kirk enter his neck
this one could be a double.
and 2 feet away?
Yep. And we've had a lot of playing that idea out over time. We've got a lot of people testing bullets, people triangulating the audio from the actual video recordings, people looking at sight lines. I drove all the way to UVU to look at a single rooftop location to try to figure out if a vent was a shooter or a vent. There's been a lot of investigation into all other angles of shot and all other theories as well. There's still a lot of theories out there, but I think we both pretty much hone in on 1 or 2, maybe 3 most likely scenarios, not necessarily exclusive.
I still catch myself saying the moment he was shot, or Charlie Kirk was shot. I still catch myself saying that. And I don't believe he was shot.
As I was captioning the video that we're gonna
believe?
release today, I caught some of this like gunshots, and I was like, wait, gun.
I'm thinking to call it the Big Bang, and I've seen other people now start to call it the Big Bang or the moment or the whatever. So I think other people are starting to
This
do
was
it.
Valposter.
Initially, gunshots seemed very rational, very reasonable to me.
They're not even
my text message from September 10th to maybe October 15th.
Let's get double the share.
That he had been shot. It was what was the angle. I love Dr. Simpson when he was really going over with it.
Very precise, but then people started shooting things with their .6s, and we found out during that investigation that Candace had seen footage that showed no blood from the back, which we kind of all could tell from all the other angles too, but the confirmation of no blood from the back, no exit wounds, then all of the different shooting that was happening with 30-6s into all sorts of different materials, like Chris Martinson, for example, did I think 38 shots in his first test that went through rows, bone-in rows, concrete behind rows, plywood and concrete behind rows. It just became more and more apparent that the rifle doesn't match the crime.
It doesn't say what it is.
In any way. And now, actually, tonight, I think that you have queued up a couple of
The
the
phone
that
company?
have been shot now, too, right?
I do, and I want to bring those in. We'll go ahead and bring Trigger Smarts in because we played this before. So this will be a recap for some of my audience. I don't know if your audience has seen this.
Maybe my Twitch audience has.
But let's bring up why we're looking at frangible rounds at all.
Yeah, the change in narrative.
Yeah. So Candace kind of dropped a bomb yesterday that the doctor may not have been the one suggesting the gunshot as much as Erica Kirk and Andrew Colvin.
A lot of the things that she dropped about Erica Kirk yesterday were absolutely game-changing. They rearranged the whole story. Well, in a way that I think a lot of people are already suspecting, the most suspicious among us are already, like, laser focused on Erica. But it's different to be suspicious of Erica than to have facts coming out that just kind of disqualify her statements.
I promise not to do the Erica Demon voice tonight. I gave him a few promises, but that's not going to happen.
We'll try our best.
I'm not going to do the Erica tail. We're keeping it clean. Keeping it clean. So clean often involves more than just. So yeah, I wanted to bring that in. The reason we're looking at frangible rounds is because initially the 30-6 round was kind of accepted by everybody. It was recapped by the news. Everybody sort of went with it. It was all over social media. Your humble host, I think I heard you talk about it. We sort of accepted, yeah, Charlie was shot. Now, where was he shot from? Was it Tyler Robinson who shot him? And then people started firing thousands and thousands of rounds at everything imaginable in the field, and we started looking at it thinking, maybe he wasn't shot. Like, maybe he wasn't shot with a 30-6. Then we get the information from TPUSA.
Mr. Malone.
In fact, did not say what Andrew Colvin said he said. In fact, what he said was perhaps there was a franchise.
I think this company knows more than what they're talking about. Oh,
Say
yeah.
that either. Maybe they're just plugging
I mean,
people.
we also halfway through that heard that the bullet had hit his C2 down to his C6, like this weird trajectory that goes through your face, like the spinal damage that the surgeon was apparently reporting was completely inconsistent with the wound that we had all seen in multiple ways. And so with the changing narrative about the damage to his neck and the changing narrative about the bullet that did the damage to his neck, and now we can't trust anything any of this said. You know? And I think that you're the one that was pointing out to me that Dr. Lee Trotter probably can't speak at all. He's probably locked up.
Yeah, we'll get
Like verbally, so to speak.
You're right. Not physically locked up.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not locked up. If he is, I hope he's enjoying it. I hope it's consensual. But let me get to this because now we have a little background to understand why it is we were looking at frangible rounds at all, because there was a legitimate question. Could this have been a frangible round? And let me say real quickly before I show this video, if you are watching on my stream, jump over real quickly on Ian, subscribe to his channel, like his video, get it pushed up to the top of the algorithm. If you are watching on Ian's, I'll be selfish here, jump over on mine, subscribe to my channel, like my video, so then we'll push it up to the front. All right, let me play this here. I think he does say a foul word or two here, but let me read. Actually, I don't want to say it. I don't want to put ugly words in.
Yeah, don't put words in his mouth.
Trigger.
Come on out.
But hey, let me. So
You're out here shooting in the cold for us.
I know it was crazy. You can see he was shaking at one point.
Look at that bullet hole.
Frangible 5.56 round. In a minute, we'll show a frangible 30-06 round. But this was Trigger
Just
Smart.
want to clarify, this round is smaller than a 30-06.
Well, it's about a third of the size.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, a traditional 30-06. Obviously, 30-06s come in a variety of weights, but this is a smaller than what you would think of as a 30-06 round. So
That's a quarter of a bone.
it looks delicious.
Yeah, it does.
I just popped. Someone texted me and asked if I was drinking again. No, this is coffee. I just put it in a red wine glass because that's all I could find when they were in. All right, let me fire this away. It's going to happen as soon as I hit play. Boom. So you saw the steak get hit. You saw the bone jump.
And so immediately, pause right there, pause. That right there, the first thing I noticed in this test was, I mean, I was actually kind of nervous because I've been theorizing that a bullet would not be stopped. And still, this round is smaller, yeah, but if this round gets stopped, then it leads to questions like, well, hey, maybe we're wrong. But not only was the bullet not stopped, but also the obvious thing that these frangible rounds are doing in every single instance of them we've seen so far, is they're doing way more damage to the actual tissue that they're passing through. And if you watch Trigger Smart's whole video, which you all should go and watch Trigger Smart's whole video, it's only like 50 minutes long, excellent video. He shoots a bunch of different fruit, he shoots water jugs, and he shoots this meat and a roast. And you can see over and over that the frangible rounds are breaking up within the flesh a little bit, and they're like sending the force out into the flesh way more. And it implies to me that if a frangible round had hit Charlie Kirk in the neck, we would have expected to see more damage to the neck, not less.
You know what this test in particular did for me, and then watching Jesse on Fire and Heavy Duty Country do their test, what it confirmed to me was a frangible round is not necessarily designed, and I don't want to spoil the conclusion this early. We're showing the first 4 seconds of the test. But the frangible round is designed not to redirect off of a hard surface. So if you shoot at a steel target in the field, you know, it might shoot back at you if you're just at the right angle. But a frangible round is not going to shoot back at you. If you hit the steel, it breaks up and falls to the ground. But it is not going to be stopped. What we learned in this test here, and we'll show, I don't want to spoil the surprise on Heavy Duty Country's video, but what we learned is it doesn't stop in the flesh either. At all. Or the bone. No, it goes right through bone on both tests. I gotta figure out, look at that. That's the bone right there. See that?
That's exactly what we have.
Look at that. I mean, it just went right through.
Sizable entry hole. Some pretty good damage. Nice wound
Oh, no,
cavity.
that's the flesh.
On that side. And
So yeah, there's your answer. Can a human neck stop the frangible round? Now again, this is a 5.56 round, which you know, in a I guess in a millimeter perspective, it's 5 millimeters across instead of 8 millimeters across on a 30-06 or 7.5 millimeters across on a 30-06 round. In terms of inches, it's 0.22 of an inch instead of 0.3 of an inch on a 30-06 round. In terms of weight, a typical 30-06 round is going to be, you know, in the 140, 170 grain. A 5.56 round is going to be around 50, maybe, give or take. So it's a smaller diameter, smaller weight. It is a little hotter round. They do fly a little faster. So it wasn't a perfect test, but Trigger Smart was able to get his hands on, I'll go ahead and pull this down. He was able to get his hands on a frangible round and give it a test. Now, what did we learn on the Heavy Duty Country?
Yeah, shout out to Jesse on Fire and Heavy Duty Country for hunting down some frangible 30-06 rounds. I'm pretty sure that Jesse on Fire said that these are actually from 1945 or something. They're actual, like, old military surplus.
Yeah. I didn't mean to pull that up. I'm sure it was a
And, she was on phone with the comment, though.
Oh, let me look at it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go wrong.
As Erica tried to explain her telling Candace she met Tyler at the 2015 rally, that was a huge lie, and he crushed it previously at the funeral rally. Erica Kirk is a blank. Yeah, when you're telling lies that were refuted already on stage at Charlie Kirk Memorial in front of millions of people, that is bad planning. That is bad PR.
A Jotard. Come on.
Bad PR. Oh, I get the Joe reference now.
You guys are great.
Yeah, we don't JoJo, but we Joe.
We don't. Did I tell you I ordered that book? It's coming. The book is on its way. I've got the license.
Let's go.
Oh, this is a 1945 collector's round. I think they said they paid $12 per round for 4 rounds of this. Which I like, because had they gone out and gotten a brand new frangible round, somebody could say, oh, well, perhaps Tyler was shooting an 80-year-old frangible round, and perhaps it would have lost some of its oomph over the years. Well, we'll find out how much oomph it lost. Here's the oomph right here. Boom. It's shot through the turkey bones, the cinder block behind it.
Oh
You'll get to watch them come up
God,
and get a
would
peek at it here.
half the sound.
Definitely doesn't do as
The
much
big
damage to what's behind it as
That was weird.
FMJ.
Oh my God! It went all the way through.
Obviously.
Well, no, but it
It
does
went all the
damage
way
behind
through,
it. That's the
and
point.
it
Does
hit
do
that.
damage behind.
Oh my God!
I mean, look at this thing.
Straight through. Holy sh! So it went
I mean, there
through.
you see the size of the hole,
And it broke.
it broke the cinder block.
Yep.
Straight
There's
through
no,
that.
look at that. His whole thumb fits in the back of it.
Yeah.
I saw it hit.
That is a
brass back
frangible
there
30-06.
like like it was like
It's
not
just
even
no way.
impinged
If
by.
you don't watch Heavy Duty Country or Jesse on Fire, go give them a follow as well.
Yeah.
They're fantastic people. They do
They
great
do
job.
great work.
Lost our aspect. There we go. All right. So, what do you conclude from it?
I mean, what we're all thinking is that he wasn't shot with a 30